Okay, welcome everyone to the dRep White Paper Working Party. This is meeting number 5, I think. And the agenda is here.
Can you send the link also to us in the chat?
Yeah.
I know you probably sent it some other way.
I did. I sent it by email, but I'll see if I can play around with this. Let's see. There we go. Okay, it's a comment link, I think. Okay, so we have Kenric, Steph, myself, Torsten, Harry. If I've missed anyone out, Jack. Who else do we have here? I'll check back on the recording to who, if anyone we've missed. Here's Chris has just turned up. Okay, to give some background, if you just read from the, I won't, because there's a lot of us here, I'll just say that you can refer to this agenda for Aaron's turned up as well, for the notes of how we do that. We usually have like a 45-minute session and then have an informal session. There's references here for the documentation. And we usually have a brief update from each participant. So maybe we can just, as there's a few of us here, just a sentence or two about. And
can you
just
pause a second? We seem to have the video in the background. I don't know whether it's mine or someone else's.
That's a heart right there. That's a heart.
I think it's mine. Sorry, I've stopped it. I had a video that started.
Okay. Okay, Andrei's identified himself as cryptotexty, so nice to know that's you, Andrei. And so you're here, and I think Chris is here, Aaron's here.
Yeah, great.
Right. So as I was saying, if we could do, if I come out of share for a moment, and if we could just do a quick sort of like decompression, just say hello, sentence or two. I'm Stephen Whitenstall of QA DAO. I'm part of the CA, the Community Governance Oversight proposal, which includes this dRep working party. Kenric, would you like to just say a couple of sentences and then we move around maybe?
Yes, I'm Kenric. I lead a company called Photrek and really thrilled to be working with Steve and the team as part of the oversight of governance, and this dRep paper is really coming together well. And thanks everyone for joining us today.
Andrei? I'll do call out, sorry. You're on mute, Andrei.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Andrii. I'm in Catalyst from Fund 1, and I've been actually a proposer, CA, PA, VPA, and also because I'm interested in blockchain governance and in governance in general. So I submitted application to be a dRep, and 2 weeks ago after town hall, there was a group on this. So I left quite many comments in that white paper, and thanks for inviting me. I think that's it.
Okay, great. Thanks for keeping it short. Jack, some people here know you, but if you can just give a brief 2 sentences or so about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm Jack. I work for IOG, and I'm part of the team that are rolling out delegation, dReps, and many other things for governance. Thanks, Stephen.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Steph?
Hello, I'm Steph. Work at Wolfram Blockchain Labs, which is a subsidiary of Wolfram Research, part of writing this white paper focused on the measuring the influence of voter power using the Bands-Off Power Index.
Harry, let's hear from you.
Hi everyone, I'm Aharon. I'm the founder of Consent, an agreement building platform. We are building web apps that for decision-making processes in a decentralized manner. We have been funded by the Catalyst project, and we're also writing together with Kenric a chapter in the white paper for providing consensus and documentation for governance in DAO.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. I'll return to Harry. I don't think we got a chance to speak there.
I'm not sure if that was for me, but
yes,
you were
yes.
breaking up.
sorry, sorry, for my mic. Yeah, I did mean you, Harry. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying you're breaking up a bit. Okay, so yeah, my name's Harry Hellyer, and I run a coaching consultancy firm called Edify with some an ecosystem set of partners, and then we run Edify collabs. So we come at it. We work with a lot of technology firms. We work with a lot of big corporates, but mainly these days it's mid-tier firms. So what's my value in this conversation? It will be to come at it perhaps more from a business point of view as opposed to a technical point of view. So rather than it being a tech dev perspective, it will be a business dev, strategy dev, ops dev perspective. If that's of use, that's fab. And if it's not, then I won't need to say anything.
Thank you, Harry.
No, that would be
Torsten.
terrific. Great.
Yeah, hello, I'm Torsten. I'm a co-editor together with this dRep white paper in shape and form. Some of you met me already in After Town Hall, so part of the team with Kenric and Stephen.
And Chris, finally. Would you like to say a few sentences, Chris? My internet connection is a bit unstable.
Good to see you again, Stephen. I'm here on behalf. Sorry, hi, Stephen. Good to see you again. In support of QA DAO and the challenge teams and the circle and all pieces of Catalyst. I'm here pleasantly observing the dRep conversation, and maybe won't be adding today. I'm burdened with kids, but thanks for all the work you guys are doing.
Thanks for
Okay.
being with us.
Thank you. I'll just return briefly to the agenda again, and do we have any updates about the research budget, Kenric? I don't think we do.
Yeah, so I did receive from your team the final payment for this project, and I've also forwarded a payment for Thurston for this month's work on being the co-editor, and later in the month we'll make final decisions primarily based on this meeting, the after town hall, and input people made to the white paper itself with regard to rewards for the reviewers. So I'll keep you posted on that.
That's great. Okay, I'll just keep it brief. On the project planning side, I've just referred to the previous proposal. We now have done a closing report on our Community Governance Oversight Fund 7 proposal, and we will be doing a presentation at Town Hall tomorrow on that. And there will be a reference to the predecessor of this working group, which was a DAO literature review, which will be briefly mentioned. And this project will be referred to as the successor of that. So watch out for that in the after Town Hall tomorrow. And if I now hand it over to you, Kenric, to talk about the community review of the white paper, perhaps you would like to share the white paper?
Yes.
So
Well, actually, I have some project planning things to discuss first. So,
okay.
So looking at the calendar, the team had kind of made a request to not hold as many meetings during August, but I wanted to kind of press forward. So we did have 2 meetings this month, but I'm going to suggest that the meeting for the 30th be canceled or postponed rather.
Okay.
Okay. And then I'm going to make a recommendation that rather than waiting a full month, that we meet on September 6th as our next meeting for this group.
Okay.
And I wanted to check whether that works.
Okay. Are there any
The one
objections?
conflict I see is there's a Catalyst coordinator meeting that Tuesday also at the same 5 p.m. UTC time. So maybe we have to switch it to 6 p.m. UTC. But I don't know how that whether that works for people or not.
Okay. Any objections or issues with that? Otherwise, we're kind of assume that a later time is okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can do that at 1800 UTC. after the coordinator meeting.
Okay, 1800 UTC. Next meeting, 1800 UTC on the 6th of September, which I think is a Tuesday. And
Yeah.
I'll set that up, Kenric.
So
Okay, and then just looking at the month of September a little bit, then my recommendation is the 6th include this whole team with the reviewers again.
Okay,
And then the 20th be just the authors. And that's when we're gonna finalize everything and, plan to make the delivery of the white paper to the community sometime before the end of the month.
okay, that's great. I'm making note of that.
And
Do you want to do a screen share of the paper, or shall I?
yeah, and I'm just trying to, okay, so that was that, and I'm trying to think if it felt like there was something other issue. Maybe just on that too, Thurston, the only other suggestion I make is this week, if you have time. I think we've done quite a good outreach to the community with the after town hall messages, but I do think a message today, if anyone wants to make input, they should be doing it this week. So if you can kind of get on the Catalyst social media and provide a link to the white paper and let people know that, they should make their input this week if they want to contribute to the review. Can you do that, Thurston? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
sorry, I was distracted for a second. Can you say that again?
Well, could you just put some posts on the different Catalyst and Swarm social media sites
Yeah.
that if people want to contribute to the review of the white paper, they should do it this week?
Okay.
Okay. All right. And then we might want, Thurston, you can look at the calendar during September, but sometime maybe like the 14th of September might be a good time to do another after town hall discussion before we release the paper.
Yeah.
Or we'll see, sometime between the 14th and the 28th, either just before or just after we've released it would be a good time to do another town hall.
Yeah, let's hit for the 14th.
Okay, Steph
Okay.
is sent in a message in chat about providing an edit access to the white paper, Kenric.
You need the link? Is that what you're saying? To
I have the
paper?
link. I've you've provided the link before, but now it seems to request access again. Maybe that's
Oh.
because reviewers are included, but I need to do
All
an
right.
update.
Let me check. Okay, so I'll share this in just a moment, but just let me quickly check how, so let me check yours first. So I have you as an editor of this, and it's also by email. It's the smacready@wolfram.com, and you're an editor.
Okay.
Let me check my email though. If I got something in my email, maybe I can just press that. Did you send a request for?
I did. Yep.
Maybe we can resolve that after the
Maybe
meeting.
offline, yeah.
Yeah, and if we can just get on with the white paper.
All right, I see
Thinking
it
of
here. So
people's
let me just
time.
press this button.
Okay.
Okay, you should have it now, Steph. I don't know why it did that, but I just gave you that. All right, so let me share the white paper. All right, so can everyone see that well? And let me just go back, let me just sort of explain how it's being, some updates on the organization of this. So the title page will just have the editors now, because we're doing this kind of more like in the structure of a book chapter or a journal. So we have a whole group of authors, but the authors are only responsible for their section. And then I also put a table of contents together. The editors are putting together an introduction. And then Philip Lazos is putting together kind of a literature review on delegated representation. So I felt like that's the one that should go first, because that's the best kind of guide to the whole thing. And then we have Steph, who's going in more depth in kind of the analytical side of how you measure power in these systems. And then finally, we conclude with Aaron, who's doing kind of an application of governance in the process of how you would come to consensus in writing a document. And I think today, I'm gonna, since Philip's not here, I'm not gonna prioritize that one. I think I'm actually gonna go in backwards order. We've had, in several other meetings, gone into quite a bit of depth of the measuring voting power. And I do want to go through more of that today with the reviewers. But just to make sure that we're also giving some kind of similar time and depth to Aaron's work, I'd like to start with that today. So I'm going to skip, and then I'm going to show you one other thing as I go through this. So each chapter now will have a section break. So there's Philip's section, and I've added some references to his section, and then there's Steph's. Each of the authors should check now that you have the you see the Zotero button right here. Should make sure that you have Zotero as an add-on so that you can add and edit citations, and then check that those get added to the bibliography. And later in the meeting, if people want guidance on that, I can kind of show some of that. But it does work. I was having trouble with it myself, but I think I just needed a little more patience on my side and going a little bit more carefully. All right, so we're going to talk about Aaron's section, but just to be clear, after his section, there's a references section for the whole thing. It would have been nice to do this by each chapter, but Zotero and Google don't have that capability. So we're just going to keep it as a kind of global for the whole document reference section. Now Andrew Fisher is not apparently able to join us today, but he did a really deep dive and was quite helpful. Have you had a chance to look at his comments, Aaron?
Yeah, and actually I implemented some changes and added some section according to the comments that have been added to the doc.
Okay, that's terrific.
The version that you are seeing now is after considering those comments.
All right, excellent. So once you feel like you've satisfied a comment, it's good to have a reply so that the commenter can understand what you did. And like, for instance, on this one, let me just read this comment, and then I think these two are tied with it. Yeah, so I agree with it. So he says, feels like you need a link between the last section and this one. It was initially unclear to me how this document creation ties back. And then I said, I've changed the order. So as far as linking it in your section, Aaron, what I would recommend is an opening sentence or two describing that you're providing an application of governance in the ability for communities to develop documents together.
I see.
And you may already have satisfied that, but that's how at some point, that's the way I would suggest you respond to this comment. And then you can leave a response, a reply. And then once you've done that, you can check it.
For sure. I did it in the other comment. This one I saw that you replied for it, so I waited for.
Okay.
And
okay, let me see. Maybe one of those can be open. Maybe if I show all of them, it'll. Let's see. Well, that wasn't helpful, actually. Let's see. I don't know if I can find it this way. Well, let me go. Why don't I let you then just describe his other comments and how you responded to it. And then following that, we'll proceed with the other people who are here. So
Yeah,
go
it'd be-
ahead.
it would be good to hear a nice summary from Aaron on that now.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah.
Yes, so the comments that I have noticed are about the structure. Very useful comments about some unclear parts of the section, and good advice also how to change the structure of a paragraph or of an idea. We did it changing. Just editing the text, the content, specific content comments, as you see, there is Simon is with us today. I see that it's not. Comment as liquid feedbacks is actually doing something similar. I did knew in the past, I knew of this application, but haven't checked it for a long time. So I did watch the demo. It is very interesting, very useful, but not focused enough. This is my impression. So we will make this comparison to other apps that are aiming for the same goal. Maybe later on, I'm not sure that if it should be in the scope of this specific paper. I doubt it actually. Besides it, I can say, Omer, unfortunately, we have another team members that could not join today. We will meet him tomorrow, just 3 of us, Kenric, that he's already gathering citation and references for previous works on consensus making and voting on creating documentation. So we will find the ones that are relevant for this specific section and we'll add it to the references of the document as soon as possible. I would just say, if you haven't yet, I guess everybody here read, but just to summarize, the idea is to widen the decision-making processes more than just voting, to the creating of the guidelines and the creating of the documentation that are needed for the operational of the community. This is what we offer, and in the context of liquid democracy and decentralized representatives, we are offering here some kind of versatile voting processes of voting influence, and that can also combine, can suggest liquid democracy for one kind of decision, direct democracy of one person, one vote for others, some kind of combination, voting powers that derived from holding of the specific coins, and also the quadratic voting and square root voting that also can be used. On the same app, we can provide different methods of decision making that can be a playground for, at least for a start, it can be a playground for us to explore and experience with different decision-making processes, from the direct democracy toward the more representatives. And this can happen if the dRep main mission will be to vote on behalf of their delegators on proposal on the catalyst process. So Consens can provide an ongoing voting and ongoing governance process that is between the voting periods of the catalyst funding process. This is the
okay. That's a good summary, Aaron. What I want to do next is, since Simon had some comments and he's here, can you say more about this liquid feedback and any other comments you have on this section, Simon?
I don't think Simon is here, Kenric.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought he was one of our attendees.
I think we just have, I mean, so it's very much a document-centered approach, isn't it, this, Aaron? So in terms of, so that's the aspect that we're covering here for the white paper. But maybe
right. And so let me do two things then. One is if anyone has read Aaron's section and wants to comment on it, that would be helpful right now. And the other thing is, some of the reviewers may still need kind of an introduction to what's expected of them. So if you have questions about the review process, you can ask those now. Let's start with the first question. Has anyone read Aaron's section and want to provide some feedback on it?
Yeah, I can't always do the handy thing, but yes, I read through the sections. I think my comments on it are 2 or 3 different levels of context. So as I said before, it depends where you want to go with it. I liked the Aaron sections, and I liked Andrei's feedback on those sections, because for me, the issue is, when I look at it, it comes down to what's the purpose of the paper and what's the purpose of this way of voting. So my particular comments in there, I think, are a bit in line with Andrei's. Is it's brilliant, and I like the explanation of things throughout the paper, and for Aaron's bit, I particularly liked. The issue, though, is the perspective. So as you were saying about having a canonical description, who is the group that this is aimed at? And I can definitely see it's aimed at people inside Catalyst, who are taking an inside-out view of the world. So they're looking from the inside to the outside, and they're thinking about being a dRep, or they're a voter who has some power to delegate, and they're thinking about, why should I engage in that system? That was all really well explained and fantastic. The group I didn't see represented particularly, and it may be that this is, you know, this is the bit around why is Catalyst here. I didn't see the bit that says, right, I'm a proposer, I'm going to put 50 hours worth of my team's time and effort into putting a proposal in, and I might, particularly if I'm from the outside in, so I'm not already working as a job and this is a side hustle, I'm actually going to take my resource, try and get it into a blockchain solution and run that through Catalyst because it's brilliant. If I'm doing that, I need to understand that the process that I'm going to put my 50, 100 hours of time into can be a trusted process that works in terms of fairness and trust, basically. And I haven't seen much of that description in this process. And it's not, again, there's no judgment on this, not a failing.
Yeah.
It's not covered. Now, in a funny way, that goes back to what is Catalyst here for? So if Catalyst is a brilliant incubation, innovation hub, and it's aimed at entrepreneurial devs who are in Catalyst or may come into Catalyst, fantastic. That's cool. If, however, it's aimed at supporting businesses, innovation-driven businesses who are going to come into that ecosystem from the outside, then there's a different set of conversations that I don't feel are covered. And as I say, Andrei started it. And then I think my second comment.
Well, let's actually, if you could pause there, because you covered quite a lot in that first comment. I'd like to have the group give some response back, because I think this is an important issue. And it came up in our early discussions in the following context, where in a voting process, we need to be evaluating the quality of the input, which is the voting process itself. And we also need to be evaluating the quality of the output, which is, do you choose projects that actually contribute to the community's success? And I think actually you're right, that at least for this white paper, we're not going to be covering that second issue as strongly. It's mentioned a little bit in Philip's section, but that would be a great follow-on. You know, for instance, Steph is doing a lot of work right now about how we put the tools together to measure voting power. But it really comes down to how we develop an auditing process of, okay, the community selected this group of projects, what were the outcomes, and how does that compare with what the outcomes could have been? So I don't know, Stephen, if
Andrii,
you want to comment further on that, or someone else does, but I think this is a very important issue.
I think, Andrii, you had your hand up. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to speak.
Yeah, thanks. I actually left also some comments and left some of the suggestions at the end of the paper, so I won't repeat them. I just think, and well, I don't know what was the plan, but I think maybe that just needs to have more details and some sections, because as I understand, the white paper will be read by really many people and maybe outside of Cardano ecosystem. So we understand, and probably you had more conversations on this, what will be dRep, and I'm following catalysts in since Fund 1, but still there are maybe some basics, like who will delegate, and even maybe to repeat, because some people might read who are not yet registered on idea scale. So how the general catalyst process happens. Maybe this information can be taken, maybe it already exists here, but I think it should be included in
Yeah, that maybe we can beef up the introduction,
Yeah.
which is intended to kind of give background for the reader.
Yeah.
Also,
Good idea. And Andrii, feel free to expand upon what you've written in the paper, because this is a video that others are going to be able to see, and some people may just watch the video. So if you had a comment in the white paper, now's the time to expand on that if you want to go a little bit further.
Also, the suggestions you just made. I mean, I'm picking up on, yes, there's the opportunity, I suppose, to appeal to a much wider audience in the blockchain world, and to do that we need to have good entry points into the paper. So not just a good summary, we can think about maybe little pre-C introductions, entry points into different sections. So if you can expand upon strategies for doing that, Andrii, that'd be much appreciated. And I'm sure Harry, from a business perspective, the relevance there could be perhaps brought out a little bit more. What you were saying about trust reminds me of a discussion between the CEO of the Cardano Foundation and the new Dirk's open source lead when they had a conversation. They were talking about establishing trust in terms of governance. So, so governance, community governance is maturing to such an extent that businesses can trust it. So
I think that was part of my second point, or set of points. So look, the first one, from my perspective, it's just about positioning. So it's just gate your paper. So if you're not going to talk about the business and that set of constituents, who are your customers for the voting, then that's fine. Just say, this looks at technical, this looks at dReps, this looks at ADA holders. But just say, look, we're not really looking at the business side of it, or we're not looking, however you want to frame business, because I think then it's brilliant. Because often what happens is you have scope bleeds, as you guys know, and then people who are looking at it, and again, if you're saying in a bigger space, they look at it, and if it isn't boxed tight enough, particularly when you're into such detail and there's such brilliance in there, then they will say, yeah, well, this doesn't work for me. Now, again, you'll know the examples, because the trusting is really important, but it's when do we need to worry about me as a proposer? Should I go for this or not? The second point was, as I say, building on what you've just said, Stephen and Andrii, which is, for me, again, the positioning of this has got several different levels. It starts with the team, then it builds out to the Catalyst community, then it builds out to Cardano and its associated entities, and then it builds out to blockchain, and then it builds out to people who want to invest. Now, the point here is, and this was my point where I agreed with Andrii, this paper is the kernel of how Cardano can show its value to all the organizations out there, not just businesses, but also the value of blockchain. And it's what you said, Stephen, it's that what's going to be different is that whole ability and all the scary stuff around governance. And so that bit, get your head around the fact that when you're writing this, the big version of this is what Cardano will take to whoever they're going to, the UN or a government or whoever, this will be part of the major value add that Cardano has and is ahead of the curve of, because of the way the values, beliefs, behaviors, ethos of Cardano Catalyst is set up. And for me,
Yeah,
that's the
and
major positioning bit. Again,
the
you don't
one-
have to do it now, but set it as a kernel so that that will flow out.
The one thing so this is an interesting point, but one thing I would emphasize as a community governance oversight team, white paper might not even be the right word for this in the end, because a white paper typically is done by an organization in part for marketing of some product. That's not really our mission here. Our mission has been to ask, what are kind of the how can we help the community be more aware about what's at play in moving to a delegated representation system? What's potential positive outcomes of that? What's potential negative outcomes of that? And then how can we put tools in place that are going to help the community actually oversee this process and make sure that it has integrity?
Aaron,
Sorry,
Harry.
I was just going to say that's the brilliant distinction, because this isn't a white paper that's there to sell stuff, because that term's been corrupted. This is a strategy paper. And I think in the UK, it's like called a green paper or whatever. This is a strategy paper that just sets out the ground to start with.
Yeah.
I suppose it started its roots as a kind of academic. It's kind of obviously evolving, but I'd just like to turn back to Aaron. Maybe you'd like to respond to some of these comments, Aaron.
Yeah, actually, I feel a little bit out of focus about the scope of the conversation. Are we talking about the whole catalyst process, the dRep put in place, or right now, if some of the comments are specifically on about the section of concerns in the white paper, because there are different answers for all of.
My interpretation, my impression is that, and I don't want to speak for you, Harry, is that what's being brought out, what your aspect of the paper is bringing out, that kind of the more community documentation side. You're broadening the scope of or in the sense your context. So it's like, and I sense that Harry is picking up on how that may apply in a broad sense to trust issues, in how we can evolve the maturity of our governance to such an extent that it establishes greater trust for community management of the Cardano blockchain. That's my understanding. And so, yeah.
Yeah, so I can give you a 2-second.
Well, actually, Harry, I'm going to ask you to pause because I'm looking at the clock. So I think what I want to do, this was really terrific. And I appreciate, Aaron, you giving an overview of your section, and appreciate the input from Harry and others. I think in the interest of time, I want to go now to Steph's section. And Steph, if you could give a very quick synopsis of what your section is about, and then if you can talk about the feedback that you've worked through so far. And then again, we'll open it up to the rest of the group to comment on your section.
So we want to define and demonstrate what the bands-off index is, so that anybody, and don't have to be familiar with governance, can understand what it is. And I think that's already some of the feedback that I've seen in the comments was, this needs to be understandable from anyone's perspective, because it could go outside of Catalyst specifically. And then how do you tailor the measurement of the bands-off index to Catalyst specifically, when dealing with tens of thousands of wallets and limited data about how voters voted, and to detail some of those limitations, and then maybe find a way to simplify and work around that to demonstrate how we could move forward based on where we're at, I think is the few step summary of what that is.
Yeah, that's a good summary. And have you had a chance to read through the comments that have been provided so far?
Just now while people are speaking, and I can see some are grammatical, some help define just things that, you know, we take for granted, like what is, you know, if you, the abbreviation for IOHK to IOG or Cardano Foundation to CF. And then, yeah, like there's a point from Andrew that said, if you have the data on what the combinatorial math of the 32,000 wallets is, this would be a good place to put that. That's not something that I just have, but I do think it's very useful. So it indicates where I could go with that. And
Yeah,
just
and
just an update from yesterday was met with Seth, and there was a, I guess just a bug in the original paper that he had referenced, which had referenced a paper just previous to that, and was able to fix it. And so now our very simple example, Kenric, works.
Oh, excellent. Good. Okay, that's
yeah.
good to hear.
Yeah.
And I have an update too. I just sent you the link for the data from Fund 4 and 5 on the graphs that Photrek had produced. So we can now, if you've got your algorithm working, I've just provided the data. So we should be able to do this simple example of measuring the voting power as it's distributed by the wealth cohorts for funds 5 at least. I know Fund 5 we can do. And that, if we can get that done in the next week or so, I think that will be an excellent contribution to this white paper to kind of, and then it gives a nice path forward to the challenges of developing that for a delegated representation system.
Yeah, I think it is useful in that it points in the direction of where we would like it to ultimately explain. It is like, so it's worth taking it further just for that, but I don't think it really says anything about Catalyst specifically, because we don't, you know, each proposal has a vote in a particular place. A wealth cohort to abstract into 10 different wealth cohorts doesn't really say anything about who voted for a particular proposal.
Yeah, as we've discussed and you just said, there's sort of simplifications we have to make in order to make some initial analysis, and then there's a path towards doing more sophisticated calculations. Let's open it up to the group. Who's had a chance to read this section, and what further comments do you have about it?
So I was just going to bring. Go on, Andre. So I've got a delay in my. So.
Yeah, I also left some comments, but the main thing is that I think maybe there could be chosen some another example, because the readers might be confused, because we take this Cardano governance example that IOG has 3, CF and Emurgo have 2, but this is in the Catalyst, these companies and entities, they don't have the same power like in these examples. I mean that this can maybe confuse a reader, because they might think that IOG, Cardano Foundation, and Emurgo has the influence and voting power in Catalyst. And they have, because they are big ADA holders, both like all 3 entities, they vote, but not like this. So this is like a small comment. And I think maybe it's possible to take, if there will be like some tests running, or to take some proposal which was voted and see how many wallets voted, and what if like maybe try to prognose what if there would be dReps and how many delegators would be. So to take like this example, just an idea. And this example, it might confuse some people on how the governance happens in the Catalyst.
So there's three things that we're trying to work through in this section, or three examples that are important. So this first example, as you've just said, is not the Catalyst process. So the paper, and maybe this is something you can check, Steph, that needs to be clear when we, that this is an example that is not Catalyst, but it is part of the Cardano system. It's a beautiful example to introduce the Banzhaf power index because it's so simple. And simple examples are important from an educational point of view. So one of the challenging things about this section is to try to bring across what this Banzhaf power index is and why it's important. So that's what that first example is intended to do. Then I think what needs to be strengthened, but we haven't been able to do it because we didn't have all the tools in place, but we're getting closer now, is a second example that is directly related to Catalyst. Now, as Steph just described, our first step there is just going to be a preliminary step because the computational complexities of trying to do this for 50,000 voters is too much. So we don't have the ability to do it completely for every voter. So what we've planned is to kind of do a Banzhaf power index based on treating each wealth cohort as a single or maybe two wallets, and thereby be able to at least show the flavor of this kind of analysis applied to the Catalyst program. So we will have that second. I think based on the updates that Steph and I just discussed, we will be able to include that second example, and that maybe will satisfy what Andrii is kind of describing.
In our last meeting, Steph, I think you referred to, I've been doing documentation a bit behind on it, but and that focused very much for people's reference on just the mathematics and the formula of the Banzhaf index. And you referred to the possibility of using infographics in the final paper. And I've been doing some whiteboard animation explainer videos. So here's one in chat, for example, on the volunteer principles. And I've been trying to look at the content of the last meeting to see, could this be explained in a minute in a whiteboard video? Could it be explained by better use of infographics? I know we have the example of the Genesis keys and the, all that, but can we present it in a better way that is more compelling, and also draws people in, so that to address Andrei's point, first thing people are going to say is, why are you talking about this? So we need to start there to draw people in, say, start with a nice example, but maybe give some infographics, say it's not generally about Catalyst, and then go on to say how it is relevant to Catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, could definitely use the compelling visualization part for sure.
Great, thanks. Are there other
received.
comments about this section?
So just maybe so make sure that I would understand correctly. You are planning to take some specific wallets with the greatest holding of ADA and compare them using the Banzhaf index to the whole other voters?
Yes, that's an initial step of the analysis. That's right.
It's to
That would,
broadly.
so for instance, go ahead, Steph.
The thought is to broadly take the, take the whole spectrum of voters and the wealth of those voter wallets, which we have some data of, and break them into deciles, and then compare those deciles with how much power they have. And so it's just abstracting away the 10,000 wallets that would make up one wealth cohort. We're just making that one coalition, and we're doing that 10 times.
Yeah.
But it can
The
be,
point is, like in this simple example we did, there's only 3 voters, right? So that we were able to do on a website that has this index, but that website only goes up to like 6 voters that it can handle. Whereas like if we break it by powers, I think there's about 12 wealth cohorts that we used in our own graphics. So now Steph will be able to have represent 12 different cohorts within the Catalyst community and do a comparison of how much voting power each of those cohorts has as a group.
and the purpose here, unlike your previous work on the quadratic voting research that in Fund 6, if I'm not wrong, is not to provide insight about the catalyst voting, but to show how we can use the Banzhaf index to measure influence power after the decentralized representatives will be implemented on the process.
Yeah, well, that my team carried out that research, and we were working towards and showed that this Banzhaf index was very important. However, within the scope of that project, we were not able to complete the calculation. What Wolfram brings to this now is actually a working algorithm that can carry out the calculation. It's not an easy calculation to do. But what Steph and his colleagues are bringing to the table is the ability to do the calculation. So it will be an important furtherance of that prior work. So we only have a few minutes left. I think if it's okay with you, Stephen, I'd like to go to the beginning of the section and treat the index and Phillips section as a whole, and I'll try to answer questions to those both to the best of my ability. So if anyone has, and just to give the overview, so the introduction is gonna give the scope of Cardano and this transition to delegated representatives, and then there'll be another paragraph added that will be like an abstract of each of the other sections. And then Philip's section has done a literature review on liquid democracy and how it's been used in other places. So it gives an excellent context for what the potential positive gains are from using this kind of method, and then also what the potential vulnerabilities are. Does anyone have comments about either the introduction or Philip's section? Okay, well, I'll just comment then myself that Andrew Fisher had provided quite a bit of feedback on the whole thing, and in particularly this section. And I went through it yesterday carefully, and I'm going to let Philip finalize everything, but I kind of put some extra comments around there and, kind of gave my view as to whether that particular input should be accepted or not accepted. And
for those who are new, if you look at the meeting documentation, I'll try and find a link for it. Actually, I'll put it in chat. There was documentation from a few weeks ago, probably about 4 weeks ago, actually, where Philip actually went over his paper in quite a lot of detail, and we took a lot of notes of what he said. And it's resolving particularly a controversy in the background literature, where the background literature, in summary, creates a negative picture of liquid democracy. But Philip, but that is kind of not kind of a misrepresentation, but not quite accurate in terms of the evidence that's based upon. And so Philip is arguing that new data and new ways of looking at liquid democracy suggest that the more recent research is telling a different kind of story. But I'll try and find the link and post that in chat.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. Okay, I think with that, are there any other final comments about the overall work here? All right, I'll stop sharing my screen and Steve, you can go back to the agenda and we can start to close out the meeting. You went back on mute, Steve. You're,
Yeah,
There
I
you go.
found the button. Yeah, but I'm sharing the screen. It's quite okay. Just to wrap up, I will before you go, I will put that link into Philip's detailed coverage of his paper, which I recommend reading. And just to recap, the next meeting, which is going to be everyone can come to, is the 6th of September, 1800 UTC. That's when we can start to sort of firm up the community review of what we've been discussing today. And thank you everyone for the input. I put a link to a Discord server if you're not already for the Community Governance Oversight Discord server, if you want to join that. That's one way of communicating with us. If as a last resort, you can always email one of the team, either Kenric, Tilston, or myself, if you have any comments or contributions. And then the 6th of September meeting will be followed by, as Kenric said, a meeting on the 20th of September. But really, that really finalizes the meeting. And unless anyone has any other business or outstanding issues they want to raise, then I'll stop the recording. Thank you.